Hello YouTube. While I've been in the process of writing this video, both Sargon of Akkad and Vernaculis made videos of their own talking about essentially the same issues I had planned to address. I'll link to their videos below, but in essence they were dealing with the issue we see now where it's considered impossible to be racist against white people, while at the same time all white people are racist by default. Luckily, the inspiration for my video was different from what Sargon and Vernaculis used, but since they covered those issues quite thoroughly, I don't feel the need to do so here. Instead, my focus will be a little different. The reason I'm making this video is that a friend of mine on Facebook, who is white and lives in the southern United States, posted a link to this post entitled, "I Racist." It's taken from a speech given by writer and software engineer John Mehta in front of a white audience. This speech was also posted on Huffington Post. Before I jump into it, I should say that it is certainly worth a read if you want to better understand the way some black people in America think. So I'm going to skip the introduction and read the parts I think are most relevant. I don't talk about race with white people because I have so often seen it go nowhere. When I was younger, I thought it was because all white people are racist. Recently, I've begun to understand that it's more nuanced than that. To understand, you have to know that black people think in terms of black people. We don't see a shooting of an innocent black child in another state as something separate from us because we know viscerally that it could be our child, our parent, or us that is shot. The shooting of Walter Scott in North Charleston resonated with me because Walter Scott was portrayed in the media as a deadbeat and a criminal. But when you look at the facts about the actual man, he was nearly indistinguishable from my own father. Racism affects us directly because the fact that it happened at a geographically remote location or to another black person is only a coincidence, an accident. It could just as easily happen to us, right here, right now. Black people think in terms of we, because we live in a society where the social and political structures interact with us as black people. White people do not think in terms of we. White people have the privilege to interact with social and political structures of our society as individuals. You are you, and I am one of them. Whites are often not directly affected by racial oppression, even in their own community. So what does not affect them locally has little chance of affecting them regionally or nationally. They have no need, nor often any real desire, to think in terms of a group. They are supported by the system, and so are mostly unaffected by it. So I think this is actually really well put. If you live in a place where your race is constantly an issue, you're going to be more aware of your race and consider it a more important part of your identity. It then logically follows that you will identify more with people who go through the same things as you and share that identity. However, he then goes on to say that when black people bring up the idea that white people are racist towards them, the white person that they're talking to feels attacked and responds by saying, "Well, I'm not racist," when the proper response would be to condemn the racists. Essentially, even though white people have the privilege of thinking of themselves as individuals, they somehow need to act as though they're responsible for the actions of people other than themselves. I'll also note that I doubt Mr. Mehta's collectivism would extend to him apologizing for the wrongdoings of other black people. Moving on. Racism is not slavery. As President Obama said, it's not avoiding the use of the word nigger. Racism is not white water fountains and the back of the bus. Martin Luther King did not end racism. Racism is a cop severing the spine of an innocent man. It is a 12-year-old child being shot for playing with a toy gun in a state where it is legal to openly carry firearms. But racism is even more subtle than that. It's more nuanced. Racism is the fact that white means normal, and anything else is different. Racism is our acceptance of an all-white Lord of the Rings cast because of historical accuracy, ignoring the fact that this is a world with an entirely fictionalized history. Even when we make shit up, we want it to be white. And racism is the fact that we all accept that it is white. Benedict Cumberbatch playing Khan in Star Trek. Khan, who is from India. Is there anyone whiter than Benedict fucking Cumberbatch? What, they needed a less racial cast because they already had the Black Uhura character? That is racism. Once you let yourself see it, it's there all the time. This is where this article starts to go off the rails a bit, in my opinion. Essentially, he's saying that any time in fiction where a character could be black and instead is played by a white actor, it is by default an example of racism. It couldn't be that Lord of the Rings is set in a fictionalized version of ancient England where it would have been populated overwhelmingly by people with fair skin. No, it must be racism. As for the casting of Cumberbatch as Khan, many people, including myself, criticized that decision. So you can't say that society was accepting of it. But it wouldn't also be my first time criticizing J.J. Abrams' Star Trek casting decision. But frankly, I didn't hear anyone cry racism when Korean John Cho was cast as the Japanese Hikaru Sulu. I looked briefly and nobody seems quite sure why Cumberbatch got cast to play Khan, who originates from India. In the original series, Khan was played by the Mexican actor Ricardo Montalban, so Abrams simply could have been continuing the tradition of not casting an Indian in the role of Khan. Apparently there's a comic book series being released that will explain Khan's ethnicity changes, but I frankly don't have access to those. But the most interesting theory I've heard is that the movie's producers were afraid to cast a person with brown skin in the role of a homicidal terrorist. That's right, they cast a white actor in the role of an Indian person because they were afraid of being called racist. And I think it's hard to argue with that logic. And that brings us again to the last line I read from the piece. That is racism. Once you let yourself see it, it's there all the time. Now, where have I heard that before?
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
Oh, that's right. So the main problem I wanted to talk about in relation to this article is actually the idea of lenses. When John Mehta looks at the world, he sees it through a racial lens. And as a result, he sees racism everywhere. When he looks at the all-white cast of Lord of the Rings, or Benedict Cumberbatch as Khan, he never even considers that there could be legitimate reasons for those decisions. His mind jumps immediately to racism as the only possible explanation. Now, beyond the obvious, why is this a problem? I think it's a problem because if you actually want to find a solution to the problem being faced by black people, calling everything racist is not going to get you anywhere. As Mehta himself points out later in the article, when you go around claiming that all of society is racist against black people, white people will get offended because, hey, they are part of society and they're not racist. If you claim Lord of the Rings is racist, and by the way, there's actually a pretty good argument that can be made there, just not the one that he made, then in a sense, you're accusing everyone who loves Lord of the Rings with tolerating, if not encouraging, racism. And that's tantamount to calling them racist. It's especially telling that whenever there's a speech or an article like this one, there are almost never actual concrete solutions to the problems brought up. Yes, black people are overrepresented among the poor and the disadvantaged and have less upward mobility in society on average. How are you going to solve it? What concrete thing can white people do to help solve this problem? See, the thing is, I suspect that people like this, who see everything through a single lens, have a hard time coming up with realistic solutions. That's because usually good solutions require looking at problems from all sides and involving all the stakeholders. If you're only looking at things from one side and you're busy demonizing the other side, you're never going to accomplish anything productive. So this same phenomenon is obviously at play in modern feminism. To them, everything is sexist. Anytime something bad happens to women, it's a case of misogyny. But what I want you to think about is this. What are your lenses? Are you an avid men's rights advocate? Are you seeing examples of sexism against men everywhere? Are you an avid anti-feminist? Are you starting to think that all the wrongs in society are perpetuated by feminists? Are you a staunch atheist who sees the evils of religion everywhere you look? See, the kind of thinking on display in the I Racist article is not confined to social justice. I see it everywhere, within every community, And if you're someone like me who cares about finding solutions to problems and actually improving situations, then you simply can't afford to be blinded by whatever lenses you're using. Anyway, I hope you found this video interesting. Please take the time to read the speech and watch the Sargon and Vernaculis videos if you haven't already. There's links below to everything. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and share as you see fit, and I wish you all the best.